Hi everyone. This short video is going to be about the Phase 2 course revision process, teaching the courses and how the alignments and processes are going to work for revising Phase 2 courses. So just want to give you a brief overview of how that's going to work and also give you an overview of how the mapping works and what's going to be involved in revising a Phase 2 course. The first thing that I want to show you is the map that has been completed for all of the degree programs offered by Allied American University. This map is the Bible or guideline, as you will, for every program that we offer. This is what has built the backbone of iBoard to show how we are measuring our core competencies and our program learning outcomes, which ones are being measured at which level, and exactly where they show up in every program. So every discussion board that's being designed in Phase 2 and every assignment that's being devised in Phase 2, if it is a measuring assignment, which would be key graded assignments at the associate's level and summative assignments at the bachelor's level, every one of those will fall somewhere on this map. Note that as we start, we have one introduction for every ICC. You can have two, but only if they occur in the same term, which over here you can see both of these occur in term 1. So we are going to measure information literacy at the introductory level twice in term 1. We are going to do that in English Comp 1 and also in Microsoft Office Fundamentals. So every ICC that we have is being introduced in one term at the introductory level. Then, at later courses, we will be reinforcing those particular ICCs. The courses here will show which classes will measure or have measuring assignments at the reinforcement level. Then, as we get through the program, and this is a bachelor's program, as you can see, the business bachelor's program. This is the classes where the student will demonstrate mastery of having achieved either the program learning outcome, which is mapped to the institutional core competency. As you can see, every program has a map. This happens to be the business program, but let's go to So let's take a look at the Criminal Justice Associates program. At this level, we are not measuring as many outcomes because the students don't have as much work to do. Of course, they're in an associate's program, but we still have the same principles that apply. Here we still introduce each ICC one time, or if it's being introduced in the same term, we can do it twice, but it's also being reinforced at different levels. And then finally, the student has mastery. One of the biggest challenges that we face is measuring oral communication. You can see here that it is introduced in English Comp 2, it is reinforced at Principles of Speech, and finally there will be an oral component to Criminal Investigation CRJ 210. So the student has to be introduced, reinforced, and master oral communication in every program at least one time and at the associate's level as well as at the bachelor's level. So here we see that there are actually two courses in the criminal justice program that will both have an oral component to them. So now, as we start revising each class, that map is the guideline for how each course is going to be developed. This particular program right here is the Marketing 220 class, which has already been revised. But you can see that here in what we're calling the P2DK, which is the guideline that will ensure that everything is measured and entered into iBoard and aligns correctly, because that's one of the issues that we've had, is a lot of the SLOs are not in alignment with the assignments. We're not measuring the core competency by what we're telling the student to do inside that class. So that's one of the things that we want to take care of in Phase 2. So here you see that the program map clearly sits right at the very front of the process on revising the Marketing 220 class. So when you start revising a course, the first thing you're going to do is answer the preliminary questionnaire, looking at whether the course needs more or fewer hours through the chat process, looking at the current alignment in the class, and also taking a look at how much revision it needs. Is each SLO measured only one time in the outcomes-based rubric, or if it's measured twice, it has to be in the same module? So then looking at the instructor resources, and all of the instructor resources will now contain the responses to the questions and the homework assignments as well, so that a brand new instructor coming right in off the street would be able to teach that class. Looking at the textbook, looking at whether the course itself still meets student needs, and then any other comments that need to be added. Then moving here to the entire program map. So looking at Marketing 220, I know that I am going to be reinforcing every core competency in the program. And the reason for that is because at the associate's level, this is the course that shows mastery of each one of these core competencies. So every one of these core competencies will be measured in this particular program. That doesn't happen frequently, but you can see that we also do have it at the bachelor's level in this program. The next job is to translate this larger map, looking at principles of marketing, into the map of each week. So where am I going to measure written communication? Which assignment's going to measure oral communication? Which one's going to measure quantitative reasoning? This is where you have to look at the course itself, what you're actually teaching inside that course, to figure out which assignments lend themselves to the ICC that you want to measure, rather than just trying to stick it anywhere. So for instance, I happen to know that in Unit 4 of Marketing 220, we deal with pricing. So I know that I'm probably going to put my quantitative reasoning in Unit 4, because that's the one that deals with quantitative issues and requires the student to make some judgments using numbers and pricing and an Excel spreadsheet and some quantitative reasoning. So moving over here, this is the little map that goes through each unit and shows which unit is going to measure that particular competency. I think it's a little bit easier to see if you can see it on a broader scale, so I've reduced the size. The SLO is over in the box, and in some cases the SLO is going to need to be revised to specifically reflect that it is asking a question about ethics and diversity, and in this case it happens to be the global diversity. So each module is lined out over here on the left. The SLO that is mapped here directly to the competency that we are going to be measuring with an assignment, and the discussion board in that particular week shows in the box. You mark the box for which one you're going to develop. Now you know that you've got to measure critical thinking, and you're going to direct the student with a proficiency descriptor that includes critical thinking components. In Module 1, the SLO is 3. Their job on this one is going to be to use a SWOT analysis, and we're going to talk later about developing proficiency descriptors, but that's too much for this particular presentation. So I know that in Module 1, SLO 3 is going to measure critical thinking. It's going to measure BPLO 4, and so I know that I have to have an assignment in that unit that measures back to this. So let's take a look at that. This is the Module 1 tab, and I can show you that the discussion board question was developed specifically to reflect the SLO3. We cannot use a new and or different SLO than one that is also going to be used by way of one of the assignments in the course. But we are going to have the student look at it and discuss it from two different perspectives. Now this is where the SME has got some academic freedom to determine what kind of question needs to go up here that is going to measure back to a particular SLO in the class. In this case, we're having the students select the product that they're going to be using for their entire course-long project, looking for 3 competitors. So I want them to go out and critically think about those competitors, finding a strength or weakness from each competitor, and discussing the opportunities and threats that they may face from those competitors with that product. So we know now that we are using those critical thinking skills. We are critically examining. There's our keywords that tell us we're measuring critical thinking. And then coming down here, we have the same SLO that's being measured in the assignment. The assignment shows that the critical thinking value rubrics have been used to help develop the proficiency descriptors. So thoroughly and systematically, methodically analyzes their own and others' companies, showing awareness of the environment for introducing their product development and marketing strategy is imaginative, accounts for complexities, and reflects informed evaluation and logical consideration. So the proficiency descriptor speaks directly to the SLO that it is measuring. I also want to talk a little bit about the super SLOs. This is the P2DK, so this is where the super SLO was selected. In this case, we are measuring writing, and the color coding here goes directly back to the writing ICC. We could have, if this were measuring oral or if it were measuring problem solving, I would have selected other super SLOs. We now have them for the oral and presentation components. We also have one for discrete problem solving and one for indiscrete problem solving. This is up to the instructor, the SME who's developing the course, to figure out which one is the appropriate one to measure. I know that in Module 4, which is where we discussed the addition of using quantitative reasoning, here you see that you have a discussion board question that addresses pricing models for other companies. So that directly associates to those quantitative reasonings. It's probably really nice to see that I made some changes in this particular unit. Over here you can see that we need to compare, that we looked at comparing different pricing strategies. But this particular assignment also has to measure ethical issues. So you can see over here that when the SLO was first developed, compared different pricing strategies, that it did not specifically address ethics. And so the SLO had to be revised to specifically reflect that we are measuring ethics with this as well. However, the ethical question was not the one that was selected for the discussion board. For the discussion board, we selected the SLO that's measuring quantitative reasoning skills. So in this case, when we go in and we select the OBR that is directly connected, and the OBR is going to show these proficiency descriptors, and when you select it, it will show what quartile the student is actually in. So no longer should the selection of the OBR be directly associated with the grade, but should be associated with the percentile or quartile that the student falls in for achieving that outcome. And specifically, so for instance, perhaps they did very poorly on the ethical question, does not recognize the basic and obvious legal and ethical issues in pricing products, but perhaps they did very well in the quantitative reasoning. They showed how they got the price for their product, they had logic, they knew exactly how that information contributes to a good pricing strategy for profitability for their product in the market. Now, as the instructor of the course, rather than the SME has the most choice in what they develop for a discussion question that will now be universal to the course. But one of the things that I did as an instructor was when I would go in and make my first post to this discussion question, that's when I added my spin on it. So for instance, I might choose a commercial that talks about pricing. I might choose a company's strategy. So I might choose something like Walmart that uses everyday low pricing, that EDLP strategy. So at that point, that's where I put my particular spin on what I think the students need to be thinking about and how they're going to look at addressing this question. So every course is going to have a uniform discussion question that's universal to the class, but still each instructor is able to put some level of their interpretation and their guidance to the students. They can even further expand by providing an example to the students and asking the students to take a look at that example and discuss it in terms of their particular product or their particular pricing strategy. That gives you a little bit of an idea of how each week we're going to take a look at what maps directly back to the ICCs and the PLOs. So as you are going through the course, your master guideline for the course is going to be this one, where in this course I know Marketing 220, at the bachelor's level I am reinforcing every ICC and PLO. At the associate's level, these would be green and this would be an M, and I am reinforcing all of them. So when we move out here, I want to show you when we get out here to Module 8, we are actually mapping an awful lot of the SLOs. It wouldn't have to be all of them, but it does happen to be a significant number of the SLOs happen to be looking at all of the ICCs, because this is the one where we need that oral presentation. And I want to go down here and show you that we have a writing component, but we also have the oral component selected. We did not select the problem solving, but in Module 4, we did select the problem solving, so that you can see that they had both discrete problem solving and indiscrete problem solving. And we have weighted the SLOs, the super SLOs, for approximately 20% of the class. So they have to use APA formatting, they've got to show organization and scope, their language and tone, the grammar and syntax is now being measured. In this class, we're looking at directly tying the super SLOs to the quantitative reasoning skills that we know that we are measuring in this particular course. So looking at Module 8, we know we've got an oral component to it. We also have a PowerPoint presentation that the student is going to be doing to demonstrate their product. So in that, they are designing a PowerPoint or similar multimedia. They could have used a YouTube, they could have used a SlideShare, they could use anything they want for that presentation. And also giving me an oral component to that. So here we are having them design that promotional campaign, and the discussion board question directly ties into the promotional campaign that they are developing. And this would be the place where I would give the student guidance. So thank you very much for listening to this recording and helping us with this new Phase 2 process. This is Diane Sykes, and if I can answer any questions for you at all, please let me know.